Welcome, everybody, to the Coach's Corner podcast presented to you by Team Rabadi. I am your host, as always, Nabil Rabadi. I have with us today...
El Jefe Extraordinaire.
Coach Robbie Rabadi.
El Coche.
El Coche Robbie Rabadi.
I like that. Hello.
That was all you had after the El Jefe?
Yeah.
I guess the boss got nothing to say.
When you get brought in so strong, you don't need to say much.
Well, we have his real hype man, his real MC with me today. Another coach, another staple, Coach Kevin Troyer. Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Kevin, you are a new face to some of these listeners.
Sir.
Jesus, come on, man. Let me finish what I'm saying. I just want you to quickly introduce yourself, kind of your history with martial arts and some of your experiences.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm a coach here at Team Rabadi, Coach Kevin, if you will. I have been training martial arts. In January will be my 13th year.
Woo!
Both Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. Thank you. And I'm loving each year, each year more and more. And I don't know. My introduction is not much to be to talk about.
I don't know,
so
Coach.
I want to put everyone else out there and just really enjoy the show and enjoy the experience
Listen,
here.
I would say Coach Kevin here is the Sherpa up my mountain of Muay Thai journey. He guides me quite a bit. So it's not nothing extraordinary. He is everything and more.
Thank you, guys.
I meant none of that. Obviously, we're pretty giggly today, but before we started recording this, not to you guys, but to those watching, we were talking a little bit of MMA, a little bit of the murkiness kind of involved in fighting. We were talking about weight divisions, like why it's so weird in boxing, but also why it's so weird in MMA. Yeah. It's kind of dated so you have like your 125 division, 135, 140. But when you get to like 170 and 185, it's like
huge
spread out. And I think we were briefly talking about like why there's kind of not much there in the 185 division. Yeah. It seems like there's one or two stars and then the rest. And so I don't know. I thought we were kind of on a pretty good roll, and then the guy behind the camera interrupted us and made us start recording it. I don't appreciate it personally. That's why we have Kevin here. But where did we leave off, Coach?
I think we're just talking about the spread and the kind of big space between 100 and, if you'll say 171 pounds, 172 pounds, to 200 pounds. That there's this huge 30-pound gap, and there's really only one division inside of it. Yeah. And so, but it's for a lot of reasons, as you'd expect. That one, just natural average American man, when he gets into shape, he tends to fall below or near 170 pounds or so. And then the larger human beings of this world who occupy light heavyweight and heavyweight, they tend to, move in that direction. Yeah. And so 185 tends to be kind of a weird space to try to drop all the way down to. And you'll see people who are close to my size trying to make 185 pounds. And that is a tough deal in there. I also think it was a timing of when it was established. It was established with the UFC. They did the legwork. So they were the ones meeting with commissions and saying, hey, this is what we want to do, and what's the weight? And I think famously the story was the light heavyweight division was at 199.
And it was called middleweight, too.
It was called middleweight. And that was with Frank Shamrock and Tito.
That's right.
And then Tito was actually consulted, and he was asked, well, what would be the optimal weight for you? And he just kind of blurted out, 205.
As we know, Tito's quite the expert on this.
A scientist of
analytical thought.
Yes. And so I think that's so it went. And as opposed to just the natural order of being like 135, 145, 155, 165, 175, 185, 195, 208, one of those scales. But I think it became also a byproduct of who they had in those divisions.
Sure.
That's exactly what I was going to chime in.
Yes, right. And go ahead, Coach, if you want to speak on who the early middleweight champions were of the UFC.
Dave Manet?
Dave Manet.
Legend?
And this brings us to a perfect segue about the man that dethroned Dave Manet was...
Evan Tanner.
No, it wasn't. It was Murillo Bustamante.
Oh, you
man.
missed your chance.
You
No,
missed
it was
your
Evan Taylor. Oh, it was Bustamante.
Yeah,
Mike.
and he had a contract
Bustamante.
dispute, and yeah, he beat him in Linland as
He had
as
some
champion.
banger fights, though, man.
He had some great fights,
I
but if you even saw that was Bustamante in his late 30s as well. So they
Was
didn't
it?
Yeah. So they didn't
He was
even
in great
have
shape.
a marketable star to run behind in that division. So it was a no man's land to say the least for a long time.
Has anybody ever like fought in the middleweight division, but like fought at 178?
No.
I haven't. Not that I know
It would
of.
probably create like the speculation of saying you should probably have a 10-pound gap between the two. Like it even fights that like idea more. But the other question I have is like, wouldn't you be dealing with too many champions, too many stars? Like boxing has all these divisions. How many actual champions can you name?
Well, I mean, personally, I think it's just you have a person that's unsatisfied with the product at hand,
Yep.
so they went off and made another one, and they were allowed to. So how many organizations are in boxing? I have no idea, because I'm not a huge boxing fan, nowhere near as much.
Four major ones,
As much
and
as
then
Coach.
about 100 other small ones.
So there's that, and then how many weight divisions are in each four of those, right?
Every single one.
So you see where like
Yeah.
you have the muddiest of water, and then you have the UFC, which has slim pickings, and they're trying also to probably avoid that muddy water.
muddy water,
So
yeah.
you have the 10 pounds for the smaller people, the 15 pounds for the middle people, and the 20 plus for the bigger people. And now you have a lopsided and a bunch of complainers in the middle, and no one taking charge to correct it and stick with it because they're scared of change, right?
Right.
Yeah.
First off, and then with all that change, you got to fix it. You got to fix it right away. And I don't
Right.
think Dana White wants to deal with the headaches of what you're saying that could be
Right.
the fear of the 65 champion, the 75 champion.
Yes.
There's going to be the first rough patch,
Of
right,
course, and
of
the roller
sorting it
coaster
out.
ride, yeah.
But after that, you have 10 divisions, right? 10 champions, and some could be multi-champion and actually hold it down.
That would be
and,
amazing.
And be a defending champion in two different weight classes, as opposed to Henry Cejudo is probably married to 35 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he feels like, man, that 10 pounds was brutal. It was
Sure.
death-defying almost.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stay here. He got relinquished at champ. And I would say this is way worse than having solidified 10-pound champions through
That's
and
right.
through.
So here's the
Personal
question
opinion.
I actually have.
Yeah.
It just kind of popped in my head. I'm creative that way. Those guys that complain, right? Like, you know, oh my gosh, dude, why do I have to cut here? Or this guy's too big, or whatever. How much of that size difference actually matters versus how good they are? I can only think of maybe once or twice where that played into effect, which was Randy Couture. Probably got beat sometimes in the heavyweight division out of sheer just somebody being bigger than him.
Yeah.
Because he could, I think even with trying, he could barely make 220, 225. So
Yeah.
how much is, what is the real percentage you think in your head that size actually matters when it comes to fighting?
I think it varies per person, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think it's when it's on the individual level, it's when it's you discover your point of diminishing returns.
Sure.
And I think that's all on a personal, but I do think it's a very small percentage, especially with the masses coming in with the pre-structured, as they say it, legalized cheating of weight cutting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that same thing. That I think it's a incredibly small number of people who are outsized in any fight.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, it's relative to it. You know, even to 10 to 15 pound differences. If you followed Manny Pacquiao's career, he's a great example of it. The skill set of size in fight sports, in combat sports,
Yeah.
at the very least, is not as big a deal as you think. Really was. So the Couture fight maybe that you were thinking about is when Randy lost to
Barnett, and then also
Rico.
to Rico.
Brock Lesnar.
but also Brock Lesnar.
Brock-
That's what
oh,
he-
yeah.
Yeah.
But who did Brock Lesnar end up losing to? Cain Velasquez, who's one of the, dad body aside, one
Yeah.
of the leaner heavyweights,
230 maybe?
235, 240, and it was skill, and really, if you're gonna have the one attainable skill of size or explosiveness, the one that really is the best in fighting is speed.
Yep.
Speed kills is the old adage, and that's how you beat it, and that's how Randy beat a lot of the heavyweights. I mean, Gabriel Gonzaga is a monster size heavyweight. He's a
Yeah.
big person, And Randy had no problem tossing around, but he beat him with speed early on.
Yeah.
Few fast shots, busted up his nose, and then all of a sudden he got to his pressure game versus the cage, and put on a clinic really of what we do in our MMA class with bounce drills and stuff. He ran the clinic on how to do all that good stuff. So
how much of John Jones running roughshod in 205 is because of his size and people can't seem to get in his range, or is it just he's just that good he confuses people?
I think it's two parts. Is that one, he is heavily skilled and is one of the best adapters of people's style that I've ever seen.
Sure.
He figures you out. He's like the football coach at halftime, seeing what he saw and then making the changes. He does that through the course of a fight and then through the course of a rematch. What rematch have we ever seen where he did not just roll through that person? Even through certain fights, like he'll have a little trouble and then figure them out real quick. There's a whole thing. The other thing too is, of course, he is tall, but he's tall in a way that is helpful to the style of fighting that he does. So that's the other thing, right? It's like it doesn't help you to be built like I'm gonna pick on poor Matt Serra being stubby and small. And his style strangely did not work very well at 55. But worked well at 170 because a taller fighter trying to come in on a smaller fighter. The target was small; it was hard to get to. Him shrinking up. For all of us, for all of you who do jiu-jitsu, rolling against that person that doesn't seem to have arms, legs, or neck, is so tough to roll with. That's the toughest body style for me to roll against, and so it's hard to deal with there. But at 55, those people were more proportionate to him.
Man.
So he was able to work it out, figured out his speed disadvantage at lightweight versus a speed advantage, or being even like middle of the road at welterweight.
I didn't think Matt Serra comparison. I like that.
Today, Matt Serra, Murillo Bustamante,
and I can't believe the Bustamante one. I'm still beating myself up over
Dave
this one.
Benet. You name another podcast that brings those three names up.
Before we move on, what was the question on John Jones? Like, how did you ask that question?
It was like, how much do you think his size advantage, because he has like great length, both his reach. He kind of seems to be a bigger 205er, a taller one for sure. How much of that do you think is actually an advantage for him that just stifles everyone within his division, that helps him out so much?
Yes, sir.
And that's where Robbie said, well, he's using his size to his advantage, but
in his
style of fighting, and also he just knows how to adjust.
Gotcha.
Did you have any thoughts to add to that?
Well, it was more just like he's one of the few fighters that can use the tools that are given to him.
Sure, yeah.
It's a lot of people that are just giving all these tools, and it's like, well, I'm a carpenter, man, and I don't need these tools. I need these tools.
Sure.
Or I'm an artist, so I need a paintbrush, not a nail gun. He used the right trade with the right tools.
Right.
And you know what I mean? That's where the real advantage. But I don't think the size, you know what I mean, really plays a role because there's people, Gustafsson, OSP, the same size, same athletic ability. Like OSP is he's very springy, very athletic, if you will.
Gustafsson frustrates me to no ends because he's just as big as Jones, but he fights a few inches from your nose all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, why would you fight this way?
Yeah, Cormier and him were fighting in each other's
in the same
as
phone
opposed to Jones and Cormier. Cormier was always having to do something kind of wild to even get close to him, to even think about that. And so remember the one of the questions then was, would Cormier take down John? It's like he was never close to him to have that option, except for maybe once near the end. Yeah. And by then John had the fight in his pocket, so he's just like.
Correction, Cormier had to do something wild to get close to John. Not it. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry, but I wanted to touch on that, see if I had a question.
Quick correction on you. Don't ever correct me ever again. No matter how wrong. It wasn't for me. It was for the listener. No matter how wrong I am. By the way, his name is Daniel Cornmeal.
I want to meet the guy who suggested a nail gun to an artist. And then I want to meet the artist that said you couldn't make art with nail gun. You're not an artist, sir.
Wrong kind of artist. Put me in a box.
So that was a quick ban. I just want to quickly move to our sponsors real quickly before we get to the subject at hand.
Sir.
First, I want to thank Restore Cryotherapy here in Round Rock, Body Tracks, and Roll Bliss. So those are our sponsors for today. Awesome people. Give them a check out.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about them before. And on to our subject at hand. Today we want to talk about your environment, why it's important, and not the actual environment on Earth, but where you train, and why that's important.
That's important
Yeah.
too, by the way.
It's, you know what, I recycled earlier, and I want to thank Brandon for teaching me a lesson in why I should. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just going to shoot the question right out. I mean, why is being in a positive environment even important? What does it mean if I'm just getting my technique, if I'm just there to learn my technique and I have somebody to train with, like, that should be good enough, right? Like, it's on me at the end of the day. So why do I need to?
I think you need to find the environment that matches what you are looking to get out of what you're about to sign up for. So if you have that mindset, I think that you will have plenty of options out there for you. You know what
Sure.
I mean? So it's positive in that manner, but sustainability and thinking long term, I think the vehicle of jiu-jitsu is way too complex and way more complex than just the training side of it.
Okay.
So with that said, if I'm going to drive this car through life or this vehicle through life for a long time, again, sustainability. I want it to be a vehicle that I want to drive continuously.
Right.
Hence the positive environment. I would rather be around people that want to help and extend their knowledge, and honestly, on a personal side, be there for you. You're having a rough day. What about that person checking in on you? That person's in charge of your health, right?
Yeah.
On the physical side, they're gonna try to choke you or break your arm.
Yeah.
And if you trust them to do that, wouldn't you trust them to say, yeah, today's not my day, I had a rough day, and
Sure.
all that? And then the positivity becomes contagious, and now you're surrounded by positive people. On the flip side, if it's the hourglass, you're going to be surrounded by negative people. And this is pretty black and white for me. Which do you want to go to? So it's
Yeah.
almost, it's
Right.
like it's so easy of
That's
a
right.
question. That's why it gets so overlooked.
That's right.
So
And there's so
that's-
many obvious, right. And there's always the obvious answers about all of this, and the things that you want to look for in that environment. What Kevin was saying, and one saying the reason I kind of jumped in on it was be reminded of something Coach Kevin says all the time is and it's even one of the subjects of one of our videos is the reason you started training won't be the reason you finish training. Why you continue, especially on that path, and so only a positive and open-minded training environment would be able to sustain you for that whole time. There are some that are so good at the beginning, some that are all about the middle journey, some about the end, some about whichever, and you see so much of that coming from your natural evolution.
Yeah.
The techniques I'm going to show you today, or the things you're going to be taught and learn, are going to be very different in 6 years. And your mindset, hopefully, has been developed to a different strategy of fighting or concept or this or that. And that environment is going to be, you're going to be the product of it.
Sure.
So it's why it helps prevent from plateauing. It helps from motivation and inspiration. I mean, when you talk about being around positive people, you talk about being around like-minded people who want to grow. And when you're in that negative space, man, it's dog eat dog. It's tough, and nobody really wants to stick their neck out for anyone.
Yeah. What are some of those then warning signs of something like a toxic environment? I mean, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is something that you just kind of need to be conscious of or look out for to know that you're like, maybe I'm not in the best place, or maybe I'm not in the best place.
Yeah. Again, it's probably pretty obvious in a lot of ways, but I think there's the obvious ones.
Sure.
And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, later, but Coach Kevin and I have trained in a bad training environment in the past and what that was like. And for lack of not just having other good options, lack of any other option is what had us in that place, and it's how me and Coach famously met.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say famously. I don't know why it's famously.
Well documented.
Well documented.
Camera crew.
When did that happen?
How come our meetup is famous, but we're not famous?
Yeah.
Weird.
One day, we push enough products on
The story
Instagram.
is serialized.
One
You
day,
guys aren't.
But going back to it is that, of course, there were obvious tells and understanding and seeing, and we'll talk more about that. But the thing that, one of the most toxic things was the lack of growth, not just in the evolutionary sense of it, but that it was all in a comfort zone, and everyone had a hierarchy within it, and that was that. And it doesn't seem like it if you come from a big family and your family's pecking order, but this ain't family,
Right.
and this ain't about that. We're not trying to achieve, a place at the dinner table. We're trying to find a little bit more about ourselves through training,
Yeah.
and was completely unhealthy. It was one of the worst aspects of it, that there was no outside source of growth to come in to really push us out of our comfort zones. Well, I'll do these 7 moves against Kevin. I normally have really high percentage of success on him, so I'll go with that. And Kevin tries his 7 moves, and he has some good shots at it. And then
Was there nobody there to be like, why don't you try this technique and see if that works against this person? Or
Yeah.
it was just,
Well,
I want to make myself feel good.
It's not. Well, sort of. I mean, so not to dominate the conversation, Kevin. I'll give you a second on this one, but the thing that I felt was, no, there wasn't, outside of a handful of training partners,
Okay.
and that's what made me become a big study on watching instructionals and even studying fights. I learned it out of necessity to grow.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to introduce some of this stuff, and why not me? Why not through this different stuff that you could seldomly get your hands on, but
Sure.
you can get your hands on some stuff here and there. Nowhere near like what it is now, and try to reintroduce some of that stuff. The other tough part was even upsetting the apple cart to bring some of that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Think about that. Just think about being the person to show a different perspective on an armbar, a different perspective on this or that, and being ostracized for it. Or told you're doing that incorrectly. That's not the way. And definitely there was an old school mentality of...
There was a fear of upstaging?
Definitely.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Well, so I think we brushed over this. I think we brushed over this. It's obvious when you're in the bad environment. But let's just run through just a couple things, and this... The one that we had...
Quick question.
It checked all those boxes. So we're talking about ego. We're talking about, out of whack ego. Not a healthy one. A very out of whack ego from the top. Environment that led everyone to want to be self-absorbed into that ego. A narcissism to it. And that everything kind of was... we were all the periphery around the nucleus of who ran it.
Austin, Texas isn't a small place.
No.
Was this literally the only place to go? Or, were there other...
Oh, yeah, back then, ultimately there was about 2. Yeah, and they were on the opposite sides of the town and stuff like that. There might have been a couple in the middle.
Sure.
But
not really.
Yeah, so...
No.
Yeah.
I can verify, no.
And
Wow.
But before I lose my train of thought, so if that was the segue, because your question was, what are some tell signs, right?
Yes.
And there are going to be some very obvious ones, and it's like almost to entertainment value. Like you walk in and you have these MIG dojos, and if you have a little bit of sense, you'll get it right away.
Right away.
But the unfortunate part is that people are not always on their path. They're looking for their path. So a lot of people come here
are wide open.
Are looking for that.
So it makes them...
they're looking for a vehicle. That's my vehicle. That's my word. This is my vehicle through life. I know that now, But when I found jiu-jitsu, I know I was looking to train,
Okay.
but I'm looking to better myself. And sometimes you have to drive that car, that
Yeah.
vehicle, a certain distance before you realize it's bad or
Okay.
it's not the right fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's that being blinded by the elephant because you're here. But when you step back, you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right? And then when the options when there becomes more options, you
Yeah.
step away from the elephant. And that's when we realize the other obvious, like, oh my God, like, there's that.
Yeah.
So then you get into the deeper side of the signs, if you will.
Yeah.
And really, it's going to be the people. Period. How do the people treat you? How does the instructor treat you? And if everything comes from the top, if the people are good, like the majority, by and large, we're talking 98%,
Right.
success rate, it's going to be so hard to bet against that this person's going to be good.
Yeah.
He's going to be good. It falls, but if there's a few good people, and then you start to venture, and you're like, oh, that's what we're in.
Right.
I'm driving this bus. We're going my way, and you have no say in it. And if you try, here's the door. But I'm going to make it very difficult and embarrassing for you to go out that door.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to walk away from an environment that's
It all depends on the time invested,
Yes.
right?
Sure.
I just got rid of my car after 9 years and 240,000 miles.
Congrats on that relationship.
It's hard,
Yeah.
it's hard. So if that's my vehicle through life and I spent, 4 or 5 years, it's going to be harder than the person that's been 4 or 5 months. And it's going to be even harder to people that were there way before me
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
at that 10-year mark
Oh, man.
making that same decision.
Yeah.
So imagine standing next to that elephant for 10 years and thinking like this is my life, not knowing that this is an elephant.
Yeah.
And you step back after 10 years, like you start going through a whirlwind of emotions.
Sure.
I've been taken advantage of. I've been I've been smushed down to this to where my confidence and my ego is not even there
Right.
because it's not mine anymore. It's the bus drivers.
Yeah.
So what ends up,
Yeah.
ultimately following you when you're trying to step out of that? How long does that maybe chastising or browbeating kind of
Yeah.
follow you even still when you try to move on?
I think it's however long you let it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
It's however long you let it because
true.
it can be, if you're good, if you're
Yeah.
ice cold with it,
Yeah.
or it can be forever. And the people that care the most, it lasts the longest.
Right.
Sure.
Right. And we had talked about this a few days ago that the people who get haunted by it and really have a hard time and fall out of complete love with what they were passionate about in training martial arts
Yeah.
or anything, right? This can go anything.
Yeah.
And you can
Haunted
feel,
by it how?
oh man, the damage that it causes in you is so devastating.
We're talking like
It
I
murders-
just got out of
yeah.
a bad relationship.
Murders
type
your
damage?
trust.
Oh,
dude.
100%.
Your trust
Trust.
gets
Oh, yeah.
it murdered point blank.
Yeah.
And you know how hard it is to come back from
Yeah,
that.
because go back to what Kevin said a few minutes ago that he's talking about the bus driver. Well, this bus driver instilled so much confidence, self-belief. You are important. What you're doing is meaningful in you, and then they now start hanging it over you like I'm a cat toy.
Yeah.
And you're watching them start to recede it, pull it away, and in fact crumble it up and throw it away. And the level of trust you have, but wait. And I don't know, and one side of my brain is telling me this is completely horrible. The other side can't let go. And it's that same battle that everyone has with
Sure.
anything that they have issues with in their life. And so it can be very tough. And you talk about, and especially for the people that stay connected to the environment
Yeah.
while you're disconnecting, it is a very lonely feeling. And it's a feeling of you feel like, am I making a huge mistake? Am I doing this? Is this wrong? Am I the one, coming from the wrong perspective and stuff? So it can be a very, very difficult.
When you guys get a student like that, how hard is it to reshape and remold their attitude or perspective on what the martial arts world should be and what it's like to actually be part of that family or environment or
Yeah.
club?
Well,
Well, all I can say is it goes back again. Kevin said it already. The big word is trust,
Mm-hmm.
and trust doesn't develop quickly. Very slow drip. It takes a long time, and you have to prove it. And I have had students that way. I've had many actually, and it is one of those things where you have to build the trust slowly and slowly ease them out of whatever unfortunate stuff has been put in there. I mean, you just think about any type of rehabilitation process. It is slow, it is agonizing, it is painful in parts, and it's going to take you out of your comfort zone. So Kevin said, you're in it for 5, 10 years, and 10 years this way, and I'm used to that, and now I got to do it a completely different way, and feel differently about myself and everything else. And so it's difficult, but just the process of trust and building it over time, and then one day it just kind of happens, and it's just there, right?
Yeah. So basically, to piggyback and answer question 1 about what's haunting, it's the trust part.
Oh, yeah.
Is that basically it stands true with every relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go back to all your ex-girlfriends. How many times you've been heartbroken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that time that you hurt so bad, you're like, I'm never gonna have a girlfriend again, right?
Yeah.
People are or marriage. I'm never gonna get married again.
Oh yeah.
And it's like they throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's how they feel. Like it's so hurting. It's like, if I have to go through that pain, I would rather never have this again.
Right.
Sure.
Close it off.
And it's the word and the feeling is trust, and it's like something that you gave wholeheartedly, and they took advantage of it, or they did something to make you lose it fully, right? So him and I are flip side on the trust coin, if you will. His is a slow burn. You already have my trust until you give me a reason not to, right? But staying true to that with the new relationship with your person, right? From the broken person or to the person who's just looking for something new. I stand my ground. He has my trust.
Yeah.
I just have to prove to him that he has my trust, and he can trust in me, right? Same thing with Robbie, though. He's going to stand his ground. He's like, well, hold your horses, if you will. Like, you gotta earn my trust, and I'm gonna earn your trust by showing you.
Right. That's right.
And the same, so it's just, I think the word that we're overlooking is patience, and something that I have very little of in very many departments. But I find myself having an abundance, and I'll get reminded in this environment. You know how many parents that have came to me and like, Coach Kevin, I have no idea how you do it. There's 45 kids out there. You have the patience of a saint. And in my head, I'm like, he didn't see me driving here. But thank you.
Yet another famous part of Kevin.
I'm one of those children, by the way.
Yeah, but it's just the patience in that student, and having it and learning it. And again, it's knowing what you want out of it. And that in itself is a skill to be learned.
Yeah.
Is knowing what you want out of your investment. And like, I think it's my depth of, the journey of me being able to say all that now.
Yeah.
So if I were to give anybody a pamphlet, it's like, it's almost going to sound like a Gary V rant. It's like, jump in this with an open mind, patience, and really it's just patience and persistence, right?
Yeah.
And that's both sides. And it's
I think another part of that, maybe another way to say that same thing, it's about attention and intention.
There you go.
And how the two work together.
Sure.
And attention giving the energy, intention, what is your energy behind it,
Sure.
and how that stuff kind of manifests.
So,
and people get a feel, not to cut you off, but people get a feel for that. And if there is a direction, even if it's not the strongest direction, even if it's not, let's take it back to our environment, the person isn't whoever, whoever they are in their background, but as long as the intention is right and it's trying to push to an optimal position for you, it makes sense. The feel is right, and so the attention, the intention, they're all put together well, and those are some of the things that are obviously missing from the bad environments.
Real quick before you carry on, and especially move on, is that crap, I just lost my train of thought. It's on the trust. So how about this? If you come from a broken home or a broken school and broken environment, this is like motherly advice.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to go into a new one, you got to love like you never loved before. So you
Yeah.
got to go into this new journey like
Vulnerable.
you're vulnerable, and you have to find the courage to do that because it's out there.
Yeah.
Don't throw it away. Don't stop driving because you got a flat tire.
That's right.
Like, I hate cars
Yeah,
because I got a flat tire.
Or read it as signs.
Yeah, or
The
that.
universe
So-
is telling me.
Yeah, so if you're wanting this or whatever you want and you get burned along the way, keep striving for it because the person that you finally find that is like, this is the guy I've been looking for the guidance, they're going to tell you all that stuff. Boy, did I get burnt, and boy, I was this close to giving up on everything, whether it's hope and dreams, life, whatever it may be. So there's my real advice is like, if that happens, don't stop there. Go search and have patience because 6 months is nothing. So if you have to try this vehicle for 6 months,
Oh my gosh.
that ain't nothing.
Nothing.
And you can try another vehicle for 6 months,
Yeah.
and that might be the one. So
That's right.
keep trying.
Coach Kevin, I look for you. Look to you for both baking cookies and motherly advice. I appreciate that.
I'm your guy.
I'm your guy. I'm your dude. Coach
So
has got you.
I know you touched on it a little bit. I mean, I know it was most of kind of what you were talking about, but I mean, how much of that environment starts with leadership versus individuals or your teammates?
So you mean how does the environment start, or how is it affected by leadership?
Exactly. Like, where does it start with first? Is it leadership?
Chicken or egg? Is
Ah.
it leadership or is it the students?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe an old school mindset on this. Like there is a hierarchy.
Yep.
And if you're a Jordan Peterson fan, in 300 million years ago in the crustacean world, there is a hierarchy, and I think it has its place.
Okay.
But if the intention is to get everyone better and better together, that will be good, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
It's going to come from the leader,
Okay.
and that leader is building leaders,
Okay.
and that's our goal. We're always trying to we're going to guide you as much as you need, but our ultimate goal is for you to be a leader.
Yep.
And if that's all of our goals, and everyone wants to get better together, then again, the word of the month is sustainability for me and him, or
Yeah.
inside it's the best way. So I think leadership is imperative and almost mandatory.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a good leader will help you learn how to become a good leader. And I mean, not to get too emotional or passionate or personal, that's why this guy right here is my guy. He's my mentor. He is my beacon through all sorts of facets of life. And my only goal is to make him proud in that sense, and
thanks,
to
buddy.
continue that with the guy behind the camera, the guy sitting next to me. And it's just real talk, guys. So
Thank you. You
Yeah.
can keep going, Kevin. No.
My ego is not
think-
fully boosted yet. Let's get a little more of that.
We're at 98%. It's a soft 98. I couldn't agree more. I think it's 100% about leadership from the top. I think it always comes from the top, and just think about the companies that have your loyalty. There is something from the top that means something, that a decision that was made, even if you don't know who it is that instilled it, but something touched you in that way, and that's, name it whatever you want to name it, but ultimately it is leadership. It is from that place. And in a past environment, I felt like there was no leadership in place, and all they were trying to create was, for lack of a better word, minions, like people to just worship at the temple of that instructor that we had, and it was being touched by a few other people and meeting others and feeling them being strong leaders. It's okay. You don't have to be right 100% of the time. You do not need to know every road on the map that you're going to take everyone. That's okay. But you're trying to help people to learn to fish, as opposed to the opposite, where you need to believe that not only am I giving you the fish, but I created the fish. It's in my pond. It's
Yes, sir.
the only reason it exists is from me.
From my will.
From my will, from my, any of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so yeah, great leaders make more great leaders, and that's what it's all about. And you don't need to be. Nobody needs to be making another patent, another. None of that. The strongest of leaders are more often than not the quietest people, the people who say the least. And do you know how much discipline is required to be a quiet leader? Is the people that you have the most respect for.
Yeah.
There are people that we can all think of right now that you have an ultimate level of respect for, and they hardly say much, but they always do the right thing.
Yeah.
And there's the most, and they seem to have the most success and the most streamlined to the successful efficiency of their life. They're like, man, they just get it. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, because they're a quiet leader who knows how to both step out in front, sit back, be both sides of the coin. And whenever you call my name, sure, I can help out. But if not, I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah.
Whatever I can do.
I think it's also, that's mandatory.
Right.
A good leader will always know that he needs to, first off, and most of the time will know when he needs to follow.
100%.
Yeah.
We all must bow our heads to someone.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, no matter what it is. And in fact, the people that I respect the most in this world bow their heads to the most people and realize that that's really how the currency of respect works. Yeah. And why it's so meaningful, why it's so important is that the more people you truly respect, the more respect you have.
We're winding down here. It's almost time. So I'm gonna ask one last question. I want to be a little more granular. Mm-hmm. How much of whatever said environment starts... I'm sorry, not that one. My bad. Question. My bad. So, granular, what freedoms should this environment allow for? And then what should it discourage? I mean, like leadership should start with having rules at the board so people kind of can... I don't want to say fall in line, but fall in line. Just know how to act a little bit, be a little... But I mean, what should be encouraged and then just not encouraged in regards to this environment?
I'll say one thing to just the point you made. Well, rules on the board to be able to read. How about rules that everyone's aware of that are followed by every member, every person that walks through that door every single time?
Yeah.
You are not above. You are not definitely below it. You are right there with everyone else, and that includes the very head and the people that surround that person. So if it is said that this is the behavior, everybody follows it. And that means everyone. And I don't mean just like in my position, but I also mean when my instructor comes to visit, that he behaves the same way. And his instructor and special guest instructor. Think about that. Think about telling a 5th degree black belt, you need to also call this brand new white belt, sir. Or, whichever. Or bow to them, shake their hand, and treat them that way as much as that person who just started, who needs to call everyone coach and professor and these types of things, or whatever, That is just like, you talk granular, that's a granular effect of that same thing. And I'm sorry, I'm not answering your question, but it
answers the question. I mean,
the way you said it really inspired that thought. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the compelling part of it. That's how
I'm amused, baby.
Yeah,
I'm amused.
Yeah, the very freedom the freedoms that you should have should disseminate from that. I mean, there should be this feeling of I don't act this way because it's not the norm of this way. I'm going with the flow of traffic. So there is really no question to do this or that, drive backwards down that same highway. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But Coach, I don't know if you had some specifics you want to bring up.
Well, it's just more like you're asking like specifics, like what should be, what the rules should be, and what's the freedom should be, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll start it off with like everybody
should have a mouthpiece.
Yeah, everybody hates rules until there's no rules.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and then what the rules should allow and encourage is growth, right? The freedoms of that, but then they should be understood by all.
Yes.
Right? And that's one of the things where you can make your decision off. Is this the vehicle?
That's right.
This vehicle comes with all these rules. not only do I, don't like this one I disdain, like, F that, or
Yeah.
what, you know what I mean? I'm not buying this car, right? Or the other one's like, yeah, I can get behind all of that, because not only does it encourage structure, but it encourages growth of every, like, all the facets, all the positive ones, right?
Yes. So I can continue to make more like-minded people on this journey.
And
It encourages.
discouraging the negative. Simple as that.
That's
And
right.
you take your biggest person, the most person that you idolize, from movie star to business entrepreneur to martial artist. They're all gonna have the rules that they live by, right? And I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but really, it's just like, you have to have rules in place.
That's right.
And trust me, those things have been through and through and through. It went from 100 rules to this because we want to make sure we cover all the ones that we need to be covered. That's why there would be 100, and half of them are laughable. Like, oh yeah, we don't need that, need that.
Yeah.
But if you leave the door open, they're gonna plow through it, and you will no longer be in charge or have control over the environment that you're trying to build.
Right. I think, and then the thing not to forget also is that in our environment specifically, there's a huge safety factor that is directly equated with the trust. It's not, I'm being looked over for a promotion. It's like, no, I can be disabled from being able to train, as I could be kept from doing my normal daily activities and things like that. And that type of stuff needs to also be addressed, as well as, Kevin said it perfectly. Everyone hates rules until there's an environment of no rules. Well, we came from one that had no rules, and it was horrible. I mean, the talking about that environment, the only saving grace that kept me there, I can speak for myself, was two things: my passion for martial arts and training, and I really wanted to do this. And then two, the people. There was great people around, and I was like, the connection was amazing, right? But everything else was a bit of the Wild West. Like, I have seen it all, and from Coach isn't a small person, and I've literally been drug around by one leg by someone who was a guest trying to do an Achilles lock and a standing Achilles lock, drug me around the mat. At least 50% of the mat I got drug around for them trying to finish it, and they were dragging me around, and I was like, comically had my hands turned up, like, how long, what are you doing? How long is this happening? And my instructor will surely, at some point, basically maybe on our second lap, he'll say, okay, maybe the third lap he'll get it. And I was just like,
that's got to be clean somehow.
And that's got to be clean. I mean, it was bizarre to say the least, of like, yeah, maybe he should be told, so listen, don't do this. Don't use somebody as a human mop.
Sure.
We've had people who were...
Maybe don't ever practice that technique again, if that's how you're going to do it.
Maybe don't...
Sometimes the best thing is have to discourage.
Yeah. So,
exactly.
So things like that. So it's being slightly mindful, and it's just like, oh man, I wish I could do, I saw Gordon Ryan doing this crazy heel hook thingy. It's like, well, listen, there's two sides to that coin. You're not thinking about your safety, and nor you're thinking about a cool move, but how horrible would you feel to injure someone for short term or long term? And so you don't think about those things and their depth. I mean, literally, I've been slammed inside of a triangle. I had a triangle on someone, and again, Coach is no small person. This guy slammed me not once. I let that go the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one, I was like, oh my gosh. And in full plain view of my instructor, and he seemed to not really care that much.
Yeah.
And so it was what it was. It's like, hey, this is how it is. This was like 99 or 2000-ish.
Yeah.
No, it had to be 2000. And it was pretty bizarre. And then I got pretty upset with that person and pushed them away from me afterwards. And again, no address, no nothing, no
guidance.
No guidance.
No guidance
hey,
on
Rodney,
how to handle this situation.
So although your anger is appropriate for what just happened to you, that shouldn't be the reaction you should have to this person who clearly doesn't know what they're doing. But that would more speak to, the lack of the ego of my instructor to say, oh, well, I never put anything in place for someone to know that's not the right thing to do. So, it's chicken and the egg
Yeah.
moment to where, well, if I admit that's wrong, then everything's wrong, then I'm wrong. Then
We can't have that.
I can't have that. This whole system implodes on itself.
Luckily, if something like that happens today, you have Restore Cryotherapy in Round Rock.
Yeah.
Drop Team Rabadi's
Plug.
name.
Nice.
Plug right
Yeah.
there.
Body Tracks Chiropractic.
Oh, just plugging it up and look tight.
Yeah, but you can see how stuff gets really carried away
Yeah.
really quick, especially like if there's no entry, excuse me, if there's no check at the point of entry. Can you imagine the insecurities, the ego, all the different things that people operate behind because they don't know any better.
Emotions.
Right.
Imagine this, like, I got cut up on the way here, and I was dragging you around by your ankle. And my intention, because I'm emotional,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this is a combat sport, and this is a release for
Sure.
everybody that does it.
Yeah.
Right? But
I
think they should also, sorry, Coach, I think also rules should have lessons built in.
Sure.
And when, one of our, it's hygiene, right? And
First
unfortunate.
episode. First episode.
Yeah,
think
you're
we
talking
know-
about laundry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but
And-
hygiene. Go ahead.
And personal hygiene, and you think, and Coach, you already know who we're talking about with that personal hygiene.
I haven't showered in 3 days. We're going, baby. The countdown's starting.
Is this because you're building Uber for laundry? Like, is this the reason?
Coach's note, Brandon, write this down.
Yeah. But
Uber for personal hygiene. A company that
Comes
comes
to
in,
brush your
trims your
teeth.
nails, brushes your teeth, washes,
Coming to America
washes
style.
you, like a human car wash.
Gargle, spit.
It's a crew of 7 people.
But yeah.
What just happened?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, but I mean, it really boils like I don't want to keep going back to the rules, but they really stand for so much. And what Coach Robbie said to me one time, he's like, "What's the most respected, organization in the United States or almost the whole world?" And it's like it's military, and what they all are in the same freaking uniform. And people are nonconformists. I guarantee you. Who is an anarchist? If he was surrounded by people
Got an
with
anarchist
guns, tell me he wouldn't die to have a SEAL on his team
Right.
that followed all those rules. And it's all about build back to respect and all of that. So all those rules and that structure is guidance and it lessons within, and it all like even something as small as that goes all the way into the environment.
Yeah.
Like it's all related, and so. We wear a lot of hats and, live the example, be the example, and do all of that.
Yeah.
And that's how you create the environment that you want, and you
Right.
live it every single day.
Right.
And that's something that I want to end on is commitment. People need to know what every day means. And I mean that. You're talking to a guy that's for the last 8 years trained twice a day, 6 days a week. Fight camps, you know what I mean? It's like that's a long road. And this is just a piece of that.
That's right.
And that's why it's so enticing,
Yeah.
but also so hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
every day, guys,
All right,
commit.
gentlemen.
Speaking of segue,
What's that?
We're kind of getting low on
all
time.
right.
Guys,
I was having a good time, but if you
Yeah.
want
the
to
book
kill,
is closing. The pen cap is hitting on. Brandon's fingernails are clipped. He's been waiting patiently. Before we end this show, thank you guys for watching and listening. Before we end this show, I always like to ask if there's any last words, any parting recommendations that you guys, as far as a book you're reading, new Shakira song that you're in love with that you want to recommend, whatever.
All of them.
Don't shake your head. Love Shakira.
So we're going music and books. And,
yeah, music is something to inspire somebody.
this is going to be a long day.
Yeah.
You know what movie I just saw? That Star Wars movie. Has anyone ever heard of it?
Coach Kevin, is there anything you want to recommend as far as a book or a podcast that you listen to?
Recommendation. I'm going to go broad stroke, and my recommendation is learn as much as you possibly can and fall in love with that. Knowledge is so addicting, and that's where you're going to find the suggestions, the books, the Shakira songs, the YouTube videos. But yeah, just start like. Almost feel starved for knowledge and wake up every day wanting to eat and consume as much as you can so you can help inspire others to do the same.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Coach Robbie?
You know what's funny? I had no book recommendation for the first time until Kevin said what he just said. Honest to goodness, and this is just a book I had just recently read, but I'm not going to ruin too much of it, but it's one of Deepak Chopra's books. It's maybe his most famous one, the seven guiding spiritual laws, and it's just really incredibly well written. It's very short. It's an amazing book, but he says life is nothing but energy and information. And I'm gonna leave you with that thought. Just it blew me away. So that's all I'll say. Please forgive me if I said the title incorrectly. It's.
I won't correct him.
Google it.
I won't correct him. I learned my lesson once.
Going up so fast, right in front of our face.
What a great leadership. It's setting the rules, man. Coach Robbie, Coach Kevin, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening and watching. Please, if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel, share, comment, tell all your friends, tell all your homies. Let them know in the hood what's happening. Thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day.